So B'Rshut Rabbanim, Rabbi Grau is here, so B'Rshut the Rosh Yeshiva. As I suppose most of you and all of you know, the situation in Israel right now is escalating and not easy. And in such times, it is important for us to join together as a school. What I'll try to do now in a few minutes is maybe frame a bit of what is going on right now. We will also say Tehillim together. We will hear from people in Israel right now that have a connection to the school. So I'll try to give us maybe a certain outlook, an overview of what I think we should be aware of today and have in mind. Right now in Israel, we have something called Operation Guardian of the Walls, Mivtza Shomer HaChomot. This is what this operation was named, as it started on Yom Yerushalayim. And because of that, this is a reference to a very famous Israeli song speaking about the Jewish individual dreaming throughout the years that he will have the merit of guarding the own walls. For 2,000 years, we did not have our own walls to guard, and also praying to the future in which there will not be necessary anymore for soldiers. Luckily enough, we live in a time and place that we have merited this great Geulah by Hashem that we celebrated on Yom Ha'atzmaut and we celebrate on Yom Yerushalayim, that we have our walls in our state to protect, and we have not yet arrived at the years that we will not need the guards anymore, and we very much need our army, and this is what we see these days. So what is the situation in Israel right now? Pictures are many times much stronger than words. So on the right here, you can see a picture of what happened in Ashkelon within a hospital that is bombarded by Hamas. These are newborn children, just born, and they need to be taken out of their rooms where they're with their mothers, where they are taken care of by the doctors, and they need to be taken into a bomb shelter corridor that is fortified, because missiles right now are shot into civilian population. You can see here on the picture what looks like a Google map and has small dots on it. This is the alarms. Each of these dots represent an alarm that was set in Eretz Israel, and you see it from the left corner on the bottom, from Sderot until Hadera, quite far north. And all of this, literally all of the area in Israel, is bombarded right now with missiles into civilian population. And when does this start? And over here on the left, you have I took a picture out of the Facebook page of the IDF. So the IDF posted a Facebook post celebrating Happy Yom Yerushalayim. And on that day specifically, what Hamas did throughout, there's a certain conflict that the details right now do not matter. I'm happy to meet and speak about them with any one of you when you want. But right now, this is not a state to understand what started. We need to understand what the situation is. And due to this conflict over rent that was paid on the houses from quite a while back, and a legal argument, Hamas in Gaza decided to declare an ultimatum, and if they would not answer, and if Israel will not take away the soldiers and whatnot, they would bombard Jerusalem, and they shot missiles to Jerusalem in what started this operation. Just so you have a bit of a feel of what does it mean that missiles are shot into Israel. Baruch Hashem, we have in Israel something called Kipat Barzel, Iron Dome, that enables missiles to be stopped while they are shot into Israel. The people in Gaza, our enemies, these terrorists, they are aware of that. And therefore, they make sure not to shoot one missile at a time, but as many as possible. And their hope is that way certain things will be missed. So here is just a short video showing you what the sky of Israel look in a night during this operation? Just so you realize, these are not fireworks. This is not some kind of show. These are actual missiles shot into civilian population. People need to stop going to work. Kids are in bomb shelter. There are civilians that are injured, that are hurt. And this is over 1,200 rockets in 40 hours, and these numbers grow all the time. Unfortunately, the problem right now in Israel is not only from the outside, but also from the inside. You see here on the left a dot on the map. This represents the city of Lod. What I'm going to describe to you now happened to some of my friends that live there, and this happens in other cities throughout Israel. There are certain cities that are mixed cities that have Israeli and Arab population together. My friends living there, these are cars in their neighborhood, all torched by Arab population. There are riots, stones are thrown into houses, shuls were burnt, yeshivas were destroyed. And this situation is that our enemies are trying to attack not only from the outside, but also from the inside. And to understand what this war is about, you need to listen to what our enemies say. And it is very important to not only listen to what they say in English when they speak to the world and say whatever lies they want to spread, but also what they speak in Arabic and what they tell their own people. And one of these things, this is one of the quotes by Khalid Mash'al, which is a Hamas leader, and I'm sure Hashem is preparing his own punishment. And he says as follows, that all of the people in every one of their places need to join this resistance until all of the Jews and Zionists go home. Meaning he is saying this is not a war only about Gaza or about Jerusalem. This is a war where each one in his place needs to take part until everyone that is a part of Israel and what it represents goes home. And why is this so relevant? Because we need to understand that this is not a war that takes place in Israel. This is not a war over a piece of land. This is a war over identity. Recent polls throughout the world show that Jews throughout the world are losing their identity as time goes by. And today, just today before we came on, I heard a quote by the vice leader of the Hamas saying that if the Jews think that they have a part in Har HaBayit and they have something to do there, so the Arabs will start claiming the Kotel, and that the Arabs should start going praying at the Kotel and turn it to be theirs as well. And we need to understand that this battle is over our identity and our land and our nation. We are experiencing right now missiles and our enemies in Israel. But this is a battle for every Jew in the world to understand that our identity, our nation is attacked. And therefore, when we'll soon say Tehillim, it's important for me that you know, we are not praying for Israel and for people that are there. We are praying for ourselves. We have in our tefillot, everyone is right now in a bomb shelter, but they're in a bomb shelter for us, and they are protecting us, and then they represent us as a nation. And one of the beautiful quotes, a very sad one, that I heard Israel publicist quote this year by an individual named Tzur Ehrlich, who spoke about the fact that Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron are so close to one another. And he says as follows, these 2 days are smuchim kol shana, they are close to each other every year, so we can calculate how do the other nations treat us when we have a country, and how do they treat us when we do not have a country. And it's sad, but we need to know that this war in Israel is our war as Jewish people. And therefore, each and every one of you is part of this battle of advocating and speaking and feeling connected, and when we join together, and when we feel the pain, and we are davening together and learning towards it, we are part of this effort. And this is an example of how we can be part of an effort. This is in Hebron last night, how we can join the effort wherever we are. So when we celebrate who we are, when we believe in who we are, when we show our identity, when we carry our flag in a proud way, when we are aware of what is going in Eretz Israel, when we don't stand silently when such things happen, this is our part, and it's important for us as a school community to be united within what is going on and knowing what the situation is, and understanding that we are part of it, and this is all a us. This is not something that is happening in Israel. This is what is happening to the Jewish nation right now, and we are in it together.
Thank you, Rabbi Horovitz. I think we'll continue now with Rabbi Aviner.
Okay, we're gonna say some Tehillim for not just Chale Zivan Israel, but also for everybody in Israel right now. It's pretty scary times, not just following the news, but speaking to relatives and friends and family that are there. Mr. Lazar, can I be partial host?
Oh, yes, let me do that. Okay. Oh, 1 second. There you go.
Okay, we're going to say two parakim of Tehillim, 121 and 130. Shalom Allah, the Sinai, and Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri, Me'em Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. Ayaten Ayaten Amrecha. Hine lo Yinum lo Yishan, Shomer Yisrael. Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha, Yad Yeminecha. Yomam Hashem lo yakeka ve'areach b'layla. Adonai yishmocha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha v'echa me'ata v'ad olam. Shir Amala mimamakim koraticha Adonai. Adonai shema b'koli te'ena aznacha kashavod l'kol tachnunai. Im avonot tishmor ya Adonai mi ya'amod. Ki imcha slicha leman tivareh. Kiviti Adonai kivita nafshi v'ledvara hocholti. Nafshi l'Adonai mishurim laboker, shomrim laboker. Yachel Yisrael Adonai, kim Adonai chesed v'ravei mofdod. V'hu yifteh et Yisrael mikol avonotav. משברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא והגנה ישראל וכל תושבי הארץ ואנשי כוחות הביטחון העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו מגבול הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים ומן הים הגדול עד בוא הערבה מכל מקום שהם ויבשה באוויר ובים. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו ממעלינו. לפניהם הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. ידבר שוננו תחתיהם, יעטרם בקטע ישועה ועטרת ניצחון. ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם עליכם, ינחם לכם עם אוהביכם, להושיע אתכם ולומר אמן.
Okay. I think we don't have the guest with us, do we, Rabbi Aviner? You as if we'll be joined by anyone.
It doesn't.
No. Okay. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful in providing some context, and of course in saying Tehillim for the state of Israel. So thank you everyone for joining.
Mr. Lazar,
Yes.
if it's okay by you, because I think it's your Zoom room, so we're happy to, if anyone has questions or want to understand more, we're happy to share perspective and thoughts with whoever one that wants. And if you want to share your feelings, feel free to do so. But again, I don't know if the room is taken.
May I say something? We talk about the safety of life, the sanctity of life, that people's lives are in danger, and it's definitely true. But I think there's something a lot more than that. Not that that's a little thing, but people are living now under stress and fear and anxiety, and the toll that's taking on society there. I don't think it's something that we can truly comprehend. Of people going to sleep at night in bomb shelters, not knowing what's going to happen. There's an incredible amount of fear and anxiety. And, we look at the news and we say, okay, one person died, 6 people died, this and that, but it's millions of people who are living in fear and anxiety. Throughout our lockdown, we're trying to speak a lot about mental health and, trying to get out a little bit more and do all these things that are really important for our mental health. And we should think about not just the lives of those living in Israel, but also the mental well-being of everybody there. If anybody has friends or family, it's worthwhile to reach out to them. Just to send a message, we're thinking of you, you're in our minds, you're in our prayers. It goes a long way because no matter where you are in Israel right now, you're living in fear. You're living in fear of the unknown, of what could be, and that's something to think about.
Yeah, we had a question on the chat here, just in terms of some context about how, how this, I think, at least how these specific events this week started, which I think maybe if someone wants to give context of the last sort of couple of weeks, I can take us into it.
So I'll speak about it a bit. Whatever will be, I think there are 2 elements that we need to remember. The first one is, and this is similar to what Rabbi Spitz said if you were here in a bit of our discussion regarding Yom Ha'atzmaut. We can start now explaining what was the political reasons and what actions led to this tension. But I think even before that, we need to remember the year now is Tafshin Pei Aleph. 100 years ago, in Tafresh Pei Aleph in 1921, there were also riots in Israel before we had a state and before anything happened. And there was abuse and murder and violence towards Jewish citizens just living in Eretz Israel, regardless. So I will explain now what happened and how things lead to it. But I think there's a very big difference that we need to remember between the fact that certain things contribute to the feeling of violence and retaliation on certain sides. But prior to that, it is important to note that our right to a Jewish country and to a Jewish state, the only one in the world that is our land for thousands of years, that we return to in a miraculous way, that is challenged and that disturbs people daily. And when opportunity comes, so many people stand against us, regardless of what we will do. So after understanding that, I think we can try and give political context. But it's important to note that none of these things are a reason to create a reality in which a Jew cannot leave his home after 8 o'clock at night because he would be attacked. And at any given time, a missile will shoot towards his house. So it's important not to confuse causes to escalation with the reason for this violence. The reason for this violence is because certain people believe that Jews should not have a state, and they will not rest until there will not be Jews in Eretz Israel. And we will not stand for that. Now, with a political situation that escalated this situation, a few things came together. So the reality is that for many years already, there's a legal argument regarding a area in Jerusalem called Shchunat Shimon HaTzadik. It's also important for us to know our side. People are speaking about Sheikh Jarrah, okay? The neighborhood in Jerusalem called Sheikh Jarrah is Shchunat Shimon HaTzadik because the tomb of Shimon HaTzadik that we know as one of the Kohanim Gdolim is there. In that neighborhood was bought in the late 19th century by some members of the Sephardi community and the Ashkenazi community in Jerusalem. In the early 20th century, 1905, when there was a census by the Ottoman Empire that ruled here, there were roughly 100 Arab families in that neighborhood and roughly 90 or 80 Jewish families in coexistence. When 1948 arrived, that area was conquered by the Arabs and left Jewish hands. And those houses were then settled by refugees from that the Jordanians gave them that area and those houses. And now there's a legal argument where the Jewish owners claim back certain houses there. This created a lot of noise in the Arab world since the Jews are kicking out Arabs from houses in Eastern Jerusalem, which is predominantly right now populated by Israeli Arabs. And therefore, that created a certain escalation. In addition, there was a lot of tension around the months of Ramadan and the prayers of the Muslims in Har HaBayit. And all of these things together created an escalated situation in Jerusalem. And for the past 2 or 3 weeks, if you're following the news, there were a lot of clashes between the Arabs and the police. What happened was that on Yom Yerushalayim, which is a day that regularly there is a Rikud Galim, people go throughout Jerusalem with flags, and it's a day of celebration where we celebrate having Jerusalem. These situations escalated, and Hamas in Gaza took advantage of this situation and decided to say that if Israel does not back out from Har HaBayit and from the area in Sheikh Jarrah and drop all its claims, they will shoot missiles, generally saying, stop your sovereignty in areas that are yours, or we will shoot. Israel, of course, could not agree to such a thing. And after Hamas shot those missiles into Israeli population, into a very central area, the IDF needed, of course, to respond. And this is what started this round. So that is a small explanation insight into what the political things that were created. I see that Philip asked, why is media coverage so one-dimensional?
We actually refined the question privately, so I'll give you a more specific. Why has the media seemed to focus on Israel's airstrikes on Palestinians, with the rockets being fired on Israel and terrorism against Israelis not being a main focus?
I'm happy to answer, but I will be more excited to hear the voices of others. So I don't know if some of my fellow rabbis would like to answer.
I'll just say a few sentences, and then I will request from Rabbi Horovitz to continue with his explanation. It comes down to the fundamentals of what anti-Semitism is, which is basically that Jews as a people do not have the same rights, standards as everybody else. So therefore, they don't have a right to protect themselves like everybody else. They don't have a right to exist like everybody else. They don't have a right to anything like everybody else. So it becomes illegitimate for Israel to defend itself, even though any other country wouldn't stand, not in the right mind, wouldn't stand for what's going on here. Right? If if Russia launched some rockets, even Katyusha rockets, to Alaska or to New York City or to California, I mean, you can only imagine what would happen. So it comes from anti-Semitism. Israel does not. Their view is that Israel does not have the rights like any other people.
So I want to start with saying that there's a complex answer that leads to the very simple answer, and it depends how you view it. But I would say as follows: as Jewish individuals, we have very high standards morally as to what we are obliged to do. And therefore, as a country and as people, we are very critical in how we behave, and we hear different voices also within the Israeli community and also within the Jewish world on how we could do things better. I think that sometimes throughout that, we can hurt ourselves where we are sometimes our worst enemy. And unfortunately, I think two things happen. The first thing is that, as Rabbi Aviner said, anti-Semitism leads a lot of what people do, and many countries are against Israel regardless. If the US would not prevent certain things and veto it in the UN, by now you would hear that the UN condemned Israel for crime wars and for other things. In an average year, you should know that Israel is condemned more than all of the countries that right now are committing genocide together. Even though Israel is trying to do things in the best way possible. So the reality is that one side is anti-Semitism, and I think the other side is that we are not always good enough advocates for ourselves, and many outlets will find the Jew or the Israeli or the guys that would say, look, we could do better, we understand the other side, and all of these things could be true after we have the sense of Aniyei Chakodmi, our fellow people. And I think my answer is, it happens, it's true, but I want to focus on the making the change. Every one of us that posts in a positive way, that reacts to lies that are out there. I saw a post today on Facebook of a Palestinian holding a coin dated to 1939 and saying Jews are here from 1948. This is a coin saying Palestine from 1939. Besides the fact that it was written on the coin also in Hebrew, besides that, the claim that we arrived in 1948 has nothing to do with reality. So I think part of it is not only to ask why is media so one-dimensional, or why is coverage focusing on one side, and we need to help share a narrative of us defending ourselves and of the reality. And you'll see that throughout media outlets, many people will share their opinions about free Palestine or do this or do that. And we need to create that other side of the voice as much as we can within our community and unite.
Another question here: is it likely for this to evolve into a war?
I think that we say generally that these days we don't have prophecy, right? So I think the big thing is, and this connects a lot to what Rabbi Etan said, the unknown, right? The anxiety, the fear. I think we can understand a bit of this from what we experience in COVID, but the reality is that we do not know how this will evolve. And also the people sitting right now in shelters and having their children in the army don't know how it will evolve. Imagine a family sitting, being bombarded, knowing that their son is right now on the border. Do I want this to evolve into a war because the IDF wants to protect me? But what will happen to my own family? These are conflicts that we need to deal with as a state. And the first thing we do is that we thank Hashem that we as a Jewish nation have these conflicts, that we have our own state. But the reality is that this not knowing if this thing will end in 2 days or in 3 months and what will involve is a big question. In reality, every side wants to give the last word, right? You want to win the argument. So if Hamas will feel that they cannot suffer any more of the Israeli attacks. There'll be probably another 2 or 3 days where Israel attacks and the people from Gaza will not retaliate. This will not escalate. But as long as after Israel attack, Hamas will continue shooting and show that they view it as legitimate to attack Israeli civilians in their homes, that will create a situation in which this will evolve into something bigger. War operation, it's very difficult to name it, but that could create a longer escalate in the air. I'll just connect to what Rav Etan said, and I'll also mention that, as you know, here in our school, we have people that are here of families of shlichut, families of doctors that came by, people that have a lot of families in Israel, people that have less family in Israel. It's very important that we'll be all sensitive to one another, that we'll ask each other, how are you feeling? Is this affecting you? Is this affecting your family? And we should be aware there could be your friend, your teacher, your parent, everyone around you, to be more sensitive to one another, to ask, to be interested, to be involved, to be positive. And this will help us join together as a group, as a school, and as what we represent as a school in these times.
So we actually, we've been joined by Etan Zivan, our former Bnei Akiva Shaliach in Toronto, to give us a little bit of context on what it's like to be in Israel right now. And we'll close off with that. Etan, please.
Right. So I guess good morning to everyone. Good to see everybody. Although on Zoom, but good to see a lot of very familiar faces here. Hope everyone's well and safe and healthy. Seems like a lot of crazy things are going on in the world. Here in Israel, I guess we're dealing less with COVID issues and more with, most recently, I guess more with Hamas, something that Israel is, I guess, on the one hand, used to dealing with, but I don't know if there's ever, I don't know if you could ever get used to what's going on now, which means that cities that everyone's heard of, whether it's Beirut, which is, very close to Gaza, all the way up to Jerusalem, Modi'in, Ra'anana. Last night, a lot of citizens of Israel spent the night going back and forth into their bomb shelter. Rockets have hit in many different places. Sadly, just today, I think there are 3 or 4 citizens plus an Israeli soldier that was killed. Situation is not great. There's a lot, just a lot going on. Me and my family, we live in the south. We live in the Negev, just south of Beersheba, about 25 minutes south of Beersheba. We are not in the range, not in the area where bombs are being where the rockets are being shot. Thank God. But whoever's following closely can sort of see that there are multiple different parts of the situation. We're sort of used to, being entirely focused, being able to focus entirely on one area, whether it's Gaza, whether it's the north, whether it's Jerusalem. It's sort of everyone. It's always been, it's sort of always happened at different times. But most recently, there just seems to be like a lot of different fronts that need to be dealt with. So one of the fronts, is obviously Gaza and everything that's happening there. Another front sort of started with Har HaBayit, sort of transferred into all sorts of different places like Ramla, Lod, Yafo, different cities where you have both an Israeli and an Arab population. And here in the Negev, we have we sort of live together with the Bedouin population, and sometimes the relationship is better, sometimes it's worse. But over the past few days, it's been there's been really long nights with them burning tires, blocking different roads, setting, just really throwing rocks at bypassing cars. Just a lot of complaints being sent into the police, and it's just sort of really hard to take care of everything. And I personally have volunteered with the border police, with the Magav, and I was out last night, and just in the 2 hours that I was out with the local police officer, we had 2 calls where we had to go and we had to put out fires, that of tires that were set on fire and blocking the road. I spoke to the police officer. He said throughout the night that he had to put out about 4 or 5 other ones. The kibbutz next door, they had about 300,000 shekels worth of damage done to the kibbutz one night. That were just local people, just youngsters, Bedouin young people just came by and just burnt, just set a whole bunch of things on fire. So I listen to myself speak, and it's like in shock that some of this stuff is going on. I don't know if there's, obviously I don't think there's any lessons necessarily at this point. We're still dealing with a lot of the issues, so I think it's hard to jump to conclusions. I think that one thing that everyone's saying, obviously, is Israel's gone through about four elections, and there's still no solid base government. There seems to be a lot of just very, very silly arguing on the top in terms of the leadership. I think it's very sad on a personal level. I think it's very sad that in cities like Lod, Ramla, Yafo, places that maybe some of you guys have visited before, some places that Israel, I think, used to or potentially was, very proud of the fact that that we have cities where we live together side by side. You could have an Arab neighbor, a Jewish neighbor, whatever it may be, and to see those cities today sort of proving the opposite and showing that living together is definitely very difficult, and under these circumstances, in many cases, impossible. For me, that's definitely something that's very hard to accept. B'ezrat Hashem, I think hopefully over the next few days things will calm down. We have thousands of reserve soldiers have already been called up, and the rumor on the street is that we're looking forward to at least a week or two of intense fighting back and forth, and potentially ground troops going in. There's no proof of that actually. That's what's going to happen, but I think everyone's sort of the same feeling that we would all like everything to just go back to those 2.5 weeks that sort of existed, where all the COVID regulations are almost gone completely. And, for the past 1.5 years has been really, really peaceful here in Israel, thank God, for the most part, for almost entirely. And there were about 2 or 3 weeks there where I think Israel really got to experience what life should be like. No COVID regulations, and this feeling of calm and peacefulness, that you could just walk around anywhere you want, any part of Israel at any time, any day, and sort of just be proud to be an Israeli citizen, just feel safe the way a Jew should in the Jewish home. And sadly, we have some neighbors who decide that it was time to remind us that maybe things aren't as as pretty as they seem. Maybe I don't know. I guess they're looking for some sort of change. I'm not exactly sure what interest they have in doing what they're doing, but Zat Hashem will be, we'll see quiet and safer days in the near future.
Thank you, Etan, for joining us and for giving that context. And we hope to hear of peace resuming, returning into that those few weeks that you described earlier, for sure. And we hope everything. We hope the best for your family as well. I'll give a moment for if anyone has a question for Etan. You can type it in the chat. You can ask him directly before we finish off. We had some questions earlier for our shlichim, so maybe the questions have been asked. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you again, Etan.
Jerry, can I just mention one more thing? Sorry, that it's a difficult position for anybody, but I know that the 2 years that we were in Toronto and 16 years that I was growing up in North America, the distance and this feeling of wanting to connect, but potentially feeling, allowing the physical distance to sort of disrupt that opportunity to really connect and to see the pictures and to hear the news and to see, it's difficult to be where you guys are in terms of your physical connection. And I just want to say that as an Israeli citizen, as somebody who's involved in a lot of projects here in terms of providing support for the communities surrounding Gaza and for the soldiers, anything, and I mean this, Bemet, like anything that you guys do is very, very, very much appreciated. It's very much accepted. It's appreciated. I know the communities that end up receiving, whether it's the gift packages or just a small video or just a letter, whatever it may be, they really, really, really need the support and really, really appreciate the support. So whatever you can do from anywhere around the world, I know that it's like, you sort of do it and it's like, how much of a difference could it actually mean? Like maybe I'm doing it a little bit more for myself and not for the families, but just know that they really, really, really need it. And they're incredibly, incredibly appreciative of any type of support that they can get from you guys. And I encourage you guys all to reach out, write a letter, send a message, just do something that can show your support. Now's the time that we could use it.
Thank you. I think that's a great message to finish on. So thanks again for joining us. Thank you to all the students and the Rebbeim who joined us. Take care, everyone.